The desert lies in silence. Under the pale light of a silver moon, the sands stretch endlessly, rolling like waves frozen in time. A warm wind stirs, brushing gently across your skin, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible murmur, a whisper from thousands of years ago. In the distance, their shapes rise against the night sky. Perfect, ancient silhouettes, standing still as if the centuries themselves dared not touch them. The pyramids, born of stone and vision, they have watched the rise and fall of empires, the ebb and flow of the great river, the coming and going of countless lifetimes. Beneath the quiet, there is a hum, not a sound of the ears, but of the soul. It is the hum of history, the heartbeat of a civilization that believed in forever. Tonight, you will walk among them. You will follow the soft light of the moon along the sands, past the shadows of time, and into the story of how these giants came to be. Beyond the dunes, where the desert surrenders to green, the Nile glides in silence. Its dark waters shimmer under the night sky, winding through the land like a ribbon of life. For thousands of years, it has been Egypt's heartbeat, a steady, patient rhythm that never falters along its banks. Papyrus reeds sway gently, their soft rustle blending with the quiet lap of the current. Small wooden boats drift lazily, their sails catching the faint breath of the night wind. Fishermen work by the glow of oil lamps, their figures moving like shadows against the silver water. Farther away, the faint scent of baking bread drifts from a cluster of mud-brick houses, where the day's labors have given way to rest. The river's rise and fall is the calendar of this land. Each year it floods, spilling rich black silt onto the fields, leaving behind the gift of fertile earth. It tells the farmers when to plant, when to harvest, and when to give thanks to the gods for another season of abundance. The Nile is not just a river, it is the reason Egypt exists at all. Without its gift, there would be no grain for bread, no trade for wealth, and no kingdom for the pharaohs to rule. And so the people honor it, as they honor the sun and the stars, knowing that its song will carry them into another year. The river's gift drew people to its shores, at first in scattered villages of farmers and herders. They built simple homes of mud brick, tilled the fertile black soil, and lived by the rhythm of the seasons. Theirs was a world of small fields and quiet harvests, of baskets woven from reeds, of grain stored for the lean months. But over time, these villages grew. Trade paths formed between them, narrow tracks worn smooth by countless footsteps. Boats carried grain, fish, and pottery from one bend of the Nile to another. Little by little, communities gathered under stronger leaders, each claiming a stretch of the river and the land beyond. They became small kingdoms, the lands of Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north, for centuries. These two realms lived apart, their rulers wearing different crowns, their banners flying different emblems, but the river, ever patient, linked them, carrying whispers from one end of the land to the other, and in time, one leader rose to unite them. Legend tells of Nama, or perhaps Menes, the first pharaoh, who bound Upper and Lower Egypt into a single kingdom, wearing the red and white crown as a symbol of unity. With unification came new ambition. The people, now bound under one ruler, turned their skill and labor to grander visions. Stone replaced mud brick, temples and tombs began to rise, sturdy and enduring, as if the pharaohs had discovered a truth, that power, once claimed, must be written not only in words, but in the very bones of the earth. These first monuments were not yet pyramids, but their shadows already reached toward eternity. Long before the great pyramids crowned the horizon, the dead were laid to rest beneath low, flat structures of stone and mud brick. These were the mastabas, named for their shape, like a bench in the desert. Rectangular and solid, they sheltered the burial chambers beneath, where the body and its treasures were placed. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not an ending, but a passage. Life continued beyond the grave, in a realm as real and vivid as the one left behind. The soul made of many parts, the ka and the ba among them, needed a safe home to return to. Even after the body had fallen still, so the mastaba became more than a tomb. It was a doorway between worlds, a place where the living could leave offerings for the dead, and where the spirit could move between realms. Walls were smoothed and painted with scenes of hunting and feasting, so that the joys of life might follow the soul into eternity. But stone is patient, and the pharaohs saw its power. It resisted wind, rain, and time itself. If the mastaba could endure for centuries, what might a greater monument achieve? In their minds, a truth took shape, that the spirit's home should be as eternal as the gods themselves. And so, the first quiet steps toward the pyramids began, each block a promise that memory would outlast the mortal span. In the time of Pharaoh Djoser, there lived a man whose name would echo through the ages, Imhotep. He was not born a king, yet his wisdom rivaled that of the gods. A physician, a priest, a scribe, and, above all, a master of building. When, tasked with creating a resting place for his pharaoh, Imhotep looked upon the mastaba, the flat, humble tomb of tradition, and saw more than what was there. He imagined it stretching upward, layer upon layer, as though the stone itself were climbing toward the sky. For Djoser, he would build not a single level, but 6, each smaller than the last, stacked into a great stairway for the soul. At Saqqara, the desert floor trembled with the work of thousands. Quarried limestone gleamed pale in the sun, each block fitted with patient care. When at last it was finished, the step pyramid rose higher than any structure the world had yet seen, a mountain shaped by human hands. It was not just a tomb, it was a proclamation. Here, in the silent desert, the pharaoh would begin his ascent to the heavens, climbing an eternal staircase into the realm of the gods. Imhotep had changed funerary architecture forever. No longer would stone be content to rest flat against the earth. Now it would rise, reaching ever higher, in a quest to touch eternity. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was more than a ruler. He was the link between heaven and earth, the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god, and upon death, the son of Ra, the sun god, journeying across the sky. His words were the law of the land, his image carved into temples, his name carried in prayers to the people. The pharaoh was not simply mortal. He was the bridge between the world of men and the eternal realm of the gods. When he died, it was not an end but a transformation, from a living god to a divine ancestor, guiding the land from beyond. The pyramid was his vessel for this transformation. It was not just a tomb, but the axis of the universe made solid. Its base, square and rooted in the earth, symbolized the ordered world. Its sides, slanting upward, mirrored the rays of the sun, guiding the pharaoh's soul toward the heavens. At its peak, stone touched sky, the moment where mortal and divine became one. Some believed the pyramid was a model of the primordial mound, the first land to rise from the waters of creation in Egyptian myth. Others saw it as a star map, aligned with the constellations that would guide the pharaoh on his eternal voyage. In its silent geometry, the pyramid held the whole cosmos, the earth below, the sun above, and the stars eternal. It was a promise, carved in stone, that the order of the heavens would endure, as would the soul of the one who ruled beneath them. After Djoser's step pyramid had touched the sky, other pharaohs dreamed of their own monuments. But it was Sneferu, founder of Egypt's fourth dynasty, who transformed those dreams into an age of architectural wonder. Sneferu was a king of vision and of patience. He did not settle for repeating the work of his predecessors. He sought perfection in form, a smooth-sided pyramid that would gleam under the sun like a single ray of light turned to stone. At Dosha, his builders began the first great experiment. They raised the sides high, at a steep angle, but as the structure rose, the weight began to strain its core. Cracks whispered through the stone. Rather than abandon the work, they adjusted the angle of the upper half, was made shallower, creating the pyramid's distinctive shape. Thus was born the bent pyramid, a graceful monument to both human ambition and human adaptation. Yet Sneferu was not done. Determined to perfect his vision, he ordered a second pyramid at Dosha. This time, lessons from the bent structure guided the builders. Block upon block, they raised a perfect slope, straight and true from base to tip. When it was finished, its walls glowed deep red in the sun, and it became known as the Red Pyramid, Egypt's first successful smooth-sided pyramid through trial and error. Sneferu had unlocked the secret of the perfect form. His reign marked the turning point from experimentation to mastery, and his work would inspire the greatest pyramid builders in history. From the lessons of Sneferu's reign came the vision of his son Khufu, a vision so vast that even the desert seemed small beside it. Khufu would raise a monument not only to his own reign, but to the power and permanence of Egypt itself. It would stand at Giza, on a plateau kissed by the sun, where the horizon stretched unbroken in every direction. The planning alone was a feat worthy of legend. Surveyors measured the ground with the precision of astronomers, aligning the pyramid's sides almost perfectly to the cardinal points. Quarries were opened, their stone blocks ferried along the Nile when the floodwaters rose, then hauled across prepared roads of packed earth. When construction began, the scale was staggering. Over 2 million blocks, each weighing tons, were placed with such care that the joints between them are scarcely wider than the width of a hand. The base stretched more than 200 meters on each side, and the pyramid's peak once reached nearly 150 meters. Into the sky, the tallest human-made structure in the world for over 3,000 years. For centuries, myths claimed that slaves built the Great Pyramid under the lash of whips. But the truth is different. Archaeology has revealed the remains of well-planned workers' villages near Giza, homes, bakeries, breweries. The builders were skilled laborers, farmers during the off-season who worked in rotating crews. They were fed, housed, and honored for their role in shaping eternity. When the last stone was set, Khufu's pyramid gleamed in the sun, sheathed in polished white limestone. It was more than a tomb. It was the horizon made solid, the pharaoh's eternal resting place, and a beacon to the gods above. From the lessons of Sneferu's reign came the vision of his son Khufu, a vision so vast that even the desert seemed small beside it. Khufu would raise a monument not only to his own reign, but to the power and permanence of Egypt itself. It would stand at Giza, on a plateau kissed by the sun, where the horizon stretched unbroken in every direction. Beside the towering monument of Khufu, another pyramid rises. It slopes just a little shorter, yet no less commanding. This is the Pyramid of Khufu, Khufu's son, a ruler who sought to honor his father's legacy while carving his own mark into eternity. From a distance, Khufu's pyramid seems taller, for it stands on higher ground, its summit still crowned with a fragment of the smooth white casing that once covered all the pyramids of Giza. In the fading light, that pale stone catches the last glow of the setting sun, as if holding on to the day for just a moment longer. But it is not only the pyramid that defines Kaffa's reign. At its feet rests a figure older than memory, hewn from the living bedrock of the plateau, the great Sphinx. With the body of a lion and the face of a man, it gazes east toward the rising sun, silent and unblinking. Some say the face is that of Kaffa himself, the pharaoh reborn as the lion of the gods, guardian of the necropolis. Others believe it is older still, a sentinel whose origins are lost in the sands of time. The truth remains locked within its weathered stone, its secrets buried deeper than the shifting dunes. For thousands of years, the Sphinx has endured wind and storm, watching over the pyramids as the stars wheel above. Its gaze is patient, eternal, a reminder that in Egypt, the line between history and myth is as thin as a shadow on the desert floor. The third and smallest pyramid at Giza belongs to Menkaure Kaffa's successor, compared to the vast monuments of his father and grandfather. It seems modest, its height barely reaching half that of Khufu's. Yet what it lacks in size, it makes up for in elegance. Menkaure's pyramid was planned with precision. Its lower courses faced in deep, polished granite from Aswan, far to the south. Granite is harder to work than limestone, demanding patient skill and strong hands, but its rich, dark surface caught the sun in warm, reddish tones. Above, lighter limestone rose toward the sky, the contrast lending the structure a quiet dignity. This smaller scale reflected a change in royal priorities. Perhaps the resources for massive pyramids were no longer abundant, or perhaps kings sought other ways to display their power through temples, statues, and richly decorated tombs. The focus began to shift from sheer size to refinement of craftsmanship. Around Menkaure's pyramid stood three smaller queen's pyramids, delicate companions that softened the massive geometry of the plateau. Temples at its base were richly adorned, their walls telling stories of the pharaoh's life and his eternal journey, though less imposing than its neighbors. Menkaure's pyramid marked the beginning of a new chapter in Egyptian architecture, one where beauty, detail, and symbolism began to share the stage with monumental scale. Beyond the shadow of the pyramids, where the desert meets the Nile's green edge, a city once bustled with life. It was not a city of kings or nobles, but of workers, artisans, and overseers, the hands and minds that brought the pharaoh's vision into being. Here, rows of modest houses stood close together, their walls of sun-baked mud brick. Smoke curled from hearths where bread was baked in clay ovens, and the scent of fresh loaves mingled with that of stewing lentils. Nearby, open courtyards rang with the sound of tools being repaired, ropes being twisted from palm fiber, and laughter drifting from small gatherings at the end of the day. The builder's diet was hearty, designed for strength. Bread and beer formed the staples, accompanied by onions, garlic, and salted fish from the Nile. On festival days, meat was shared, roasted goat or beef, a luxury savored slowly. Beer, thick and nourishing, was poured generously, and songs rose into the night air. Artisans worked in nearby workshops, carving stone vessels, shaping copper chisels, and crafting the wooden sledges that bore the great limestone blocks. Overseers moved between work gangs, tallying supplies, organizing shifts, and ensuring the labor flowed as steadily as the river. Though their names rarely survived in royal inscriptions, graffiti found in hidden chambers tells another story. of proud crews who called themselves friends of Khufu or drunkards of Menkaure, leaving their mark for the ages. These were not faceless laborers, but skilled, organized, and deeply human, their lives woven into the very stones they raised. The pyramids were not born of magic, though standing before them, it is easy to believe they might have been. They were the work of skill, patience, and a deep understanding of stone. Limestone was cut from nearby quarries using copper chisels, wooden mallets, and dolerite pounders, rounded stones harder than the rock they struck. Workers chipped away at the quarry face, loosening great blocks, then pried them free with levers of wood. For granite, brought from the quarries of Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south, the process was slower, the tools blunter, the labor harder. Once freed, the stones began their journey. During the Nile's flood season, barges carried them along the river's gentle current. The sound of water slapping against holes mixing with the creak of ropes and the voices of oarsmen. From the riverbank, wooden sledges bore the blocks across, prepared roads. Archaeologists believe the sand in front of the sledges was dampened, reducing friction so the heavy stones could slide more easily. Lifting them into place required more ingenuity still. Ramps of packed earth and rubble rose alongside the growing pyramid, straight ramps for the lower courses, perhaps spiraling as the structure climbed. Teams of workers hauled each block upward, placing it carefully, one beside another, until the lines were so precise that a blade of grass could scarcely slip between them. With each stone set, the monument grew. There was no rush, no frantic pace, only the steady, rhythmic labor of generations, driven by the belief that they were building not just for their pharaoh, but for eternity itself. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a doorway. The pyramid was the vessel, but the body of the pharaoh and all that would travel with him required its own careful preparation. In quiet, shadowed chambers far from the desert, sun embalmers began the work of mummification. The body was cleansed and anointed, then the internal organs carefully removed. The heart, the seat of thought and emotion, was often left in place, for it would be weighed in the afterlife against the feather of Mat, goddess of truth. The other organs were preserved in canopic jars, each protected by a guardian deity. The body was then dried with natron, a natural salt, for 40 days or more. When the flesh was prepared, it was wrapped in fine linen, layer upon layer, with charms and amulets nestled between the folds. A scarab for rebirth, an eye of Horus for protection, a knot of Isis for healing. The final wrappings were sealed with resin, and a mask of gold and precious stones was placed over the face, giving the pharaoh a visage worthy of eternity. But the journey required more than a preserved body. Within the tomb, treasures were gathered, furniture, chariots, fine clothing, jewelry, food, and wine. Miniature servants, carved from wood or stone, would magically come to life to serve the pharaoh in the next world. Every item carried meaning: a bed for rest, vessels for drink, weapons for defense, and scrolls of spells to guide the soul through the dangers of the underworld. In the flicker of oil lamps, priests chanted the final rites, sealing the tomb with prayers. The door was closed, the passage filled with stone, and the pyramid stood above it all, a silent beacon to guide the soul forever toward the light of the rising sun. On a clear night above Giza, the stars burn bright and steady, just as they did 5,000 years ago. The same constellations that watched over the builders still wheel across the sky, their patterns unchanged by the passing of empires. The ancient Egyptians believed the heavens were not just a distant canopy of lights, they were a map, a reflection of the divine order. The pharaoh, upon death, would join the gods among the stars, his soul sailing the night sky in the solar bark of Ra, the Great. Pyramid's sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west. Its passages and shafts, cut with precision, point toward specific stars. Some align with Orion's belt, which the Egyptians associated with Osiris, god of the afterlife and rebirth. Others point to Sirius, the brightest star, linked to the goddess Isis and the annual flooding of the Nile. These were not coincidences of stone. They were intentional, a union of earth and sky. The pyramid was not merely a tomb, but a cosmic gateway, its slopes echoing the sun's rays, its interior channels guiding the pharaoh's spirit toward the constellations that promised eternal life. When the moonlight brushes its sides, you can almost imagine the steps of the pharaoh's soul ascending, each star a rung upon his celestial ladder, each constellation a god welcoming him home. To the ancient Egyptians, a person was more than flesh and bone. Within each human life were invisible forces, each with its own purpose. The Ka was the life force, the spark that gave breath and strength. The Ba was the soul's personality, the part that could move freely, even after death. And there was the Ok, the transfigured spirit, formed when the Ka and Ba were reunited in the afterlife. When the body died, the Ka remained bound to it, sustained by offerings of food and drink left by the living. The Ba, often imagined as a bird with a human face, would travel between the worlds, visiting the living, exploring the heavens, or venturing through the underworld. The pyramid was more than a resting place for the body. It was a grand gateway, a carefully crafted vessel to guide the Ka and Ba through the trials of the afterlife. Its narrow passages were aligned with the stars, serving as celestial corridors for the soul's ascent. Its massive base anchored the pharaoh to the earth, while its pointed summit reached toward the sky, bridging mortal life and eternity. Inside, spells carved into stone and painted on walls served as a map, instructions for navigating the dangers of the Doit, the Egyptian underworld. With each chamber, each symbol, the pyramid whispered to the soul, "You are not lost. You are on the path. The stars await." And when the Ka and Ba were at last reunited, the pharaoh became an Ok, a shining spirit among the gods, eternal as the pyramids themselves. In the stillness of the pyramid's inner chambers, the gods themselves seemed to keep watch. Their images, carved in relief or painted in rich colors, told stories older than the stones that held them. Osiris, lord of the afterlife, stood crowned in white, holding the crook and flail, symbols of kingship and divine authority. It was he who judged the souls of the dead, weighing the heart against the feather of Mat. To the pharaoh, Osiris was both guide and goal, the god he would become in death, ruling forever in the realm beyond, Anubis. The jackal-headed god watched over the rites of mummification. In the shadows, his keen eyes guarded the passage between life and death. It was Anubis who led the soul to its judgment, who ensured the body was preserved and the tomb kept safe from desecration. Above all, Ra, the sun god, was the giver of life. He sailed across the sky by day, bringing warmth and light, then journeyed through the underworld by night, defeating the serpent of chaos before rising again in the morning. The pharaoh in his afterlife would join Ra on this eternal voyage, helping to keep the world in balance. The walls told these myths in symbols and sacred scenes, the weighing of the heart, the offering of bread and beer to the gods, the embrace of the pharaoh by Horus, son of Osiris. Every figure, every glyph was more than decoration. It was a spell, a prayer, a promise. In this way, the pyramid was not silent at all. It spoke in the language of eternity, its stones whispering the old stories so the soul would never forget the path home. Far from the crowds that gather at Giza, the desert holds other pyramids, some standing proud, others crumbling into the sand, their stories fading like whispers carried on the wind. At Medum, south of Cairo, a pyramid rises like a giant, stepped tower. Once, it may have been sculpted, perhaps even a perfect monument to Sneferu's vision, but time and gravity have taken their toll. Its outer layers collapsed long ago, leaving its core exposed, a ghost of the structure it once was. In the stillness, it feels abandoned. Yet it watches the horizon with the same patient gaze as its more famous kin. At Dosha, the bent pyramid still tilts its head toward the sky, its strange angles telling the tale of engineering challenges overcome and mistakes that could not be hidden. Nearby, the red pyramid glows warmly in the late sun, the first of its kind to achieve smooth perfection, yet it rests in relative solitude. The desert wind its only constant companion. That end there is Abusa, where smaller pyramids crumble gently into mounds, their once proud casing stones long gone, scavenged over centuries. Here, temple walls lie broken, and fallen columns half buried in sand mark the boundaries of forgotten sacred spaces. These places are quieter than Giza, but no less sacred. Each ruined face, each weathered block, carries the weight of a name once spoken in prayer. Though sand may hide them, the pyramids endure, their bones of stone waiting for the day when history's voice will call them into the light again. Follow the Nile upstream, past Egypt's southern border, and the river winds into a land the ancients called Kush, a kingdom of golden deserts, black rock, and deep blue waters. Here, too, the pyramids rise, though they are smaller, steeper, and more numerous than those of Giza in the royal cemeteries of Meru and Napata. Dozens of these pointed monuments clustered together like sentinels on the sand. They were built by the Nubian kings and queens who ruled their lands, and, for a time, even Egypt itself. Their form was inspired by the great monuments of the north. Yet they carried their own unique style, sharper in slope, with chapels built at their base. The ties between Egypt and Nubia were complex, sometimes allies, sometimes rivals. They traded gold, ivory, and exotic goods. They exchanged soldiers and artisans, and with these exchanges came ideas of kingship, of the afterlife, of monuments that could bridge the world of the living and the dead. In the desert stillness, the Nubian pyramids stand as proof that Egypt's legacy did not end at its borders. It traveled with the flow of the Nile, finding new shapes, new languages, and new lands in which to root itself as the night wind moves across the dunes. You can imagine the shared dreams of both peoples, of eternity carved in stone, and of a horizon that always lies just beyond the river's bend. In time, the age of pyramid building faded. The pharaohs turned their eyes away from monuments that rose against the sky and drew the gaze of the living. Instead, they sought to hide their tombs, not to diminish their grandeur, but to protect their treasures from the ever-watchful hands of thieves. South of Thebes, in a sun-baked valley hemmed in by jagged cliffs, they carved their burial chambers deep into the rock. This place would come to be known as the Valley of the Kings. Here, the tombs lay invisible from a distance, their entrances masked by the folds of the earth. The shift was more than architectural. Egypt was changing. The cost of colossal pyramids weighed heavily on the kingdom, and the nation's power was tested by foreign threats, internal divisions, and economic strain. The wealth of the pharaohs was now hidden underground, where stone corridors and painted chambers replaced towering limestone. Inside, the walls bloomed with color, scenes of the gods guiding the king through the duat, spells from the Book of the Dead, constellations painted on ceilings to guide the soul's night voyage. These were not lesser tombs. They were masterpieces of art and devotion, protected not by height, but by secrecy. Yet even in their concealment, time and greed found a way in. Many tombs were plundered in antiquity, leaving behind echoes of what once lay within. Still, the valley remains a place where the air feels thick with the presence of the dead, a reminder that Egypt's quest for eternity adapted, but never ended. Beneath the grandeur of the pyramids and the hidden tombs lies something quieter, the voices of the people who built them. In shadowed corridors and on blocks never meant to be seen, archaeologists have found rough red marks, notes, measurements, names of work crews. Some inscriptions are practical: North Gang, Friends of Khufu, Drunkards of Menkaure. Others read like quiet boasts, carved by hands calloused from years of labor, yet filled with pride at what they had made. These marks tell us that the builders were not nameless slaves, but skilled workers, often organized in rotating teams, their contributions remembered in their own way. Centuries later, when the sands finally yielded their secrets, modern explorers uncovered these traces alongside far greater treasures. In 1922, Howard Carter's lantern lit the golden face of Tutankhamun, untouched for more than 3,000 years. Elsewhere, digs revealed entire workers' villages, rows of small rooms, hearths for baking bread, tools worn smooth from use. The great monuments were built by hands both ordinary and extraordinary, their owners long gone, their work still standing against the wind. In the end, the pyramids and tombs are not just about kings. They are about people, thousands of them, whose sweat and skill shaped stone into eternity. And in the faint strokes of ochre paint, in a joking nickname scratched into a block, their humanity endures. Long before archaeologists brushed away the desert dust, the pyramids had already captured the imagination of travelers. Greek historians like Herodotus visited Egypt in the 5th century BCE. Listening to stories told by local priests and guides, he wrote of endless laborers, decades of toil, and kings who ruled with absolute power. Some of his accounts hold grains of truth. The immense time and organization it took to raise such monuments, the grandeur of royal ambitions, but others bear the marks of exaggeration, colored by hearsay and the biases of an outsider. He told of ramps stretching for miles, of workers numbering in the hundreds of thousands, of magical feats that lifted stone to the sky. Roman writers followed, adding their own flourishes. They marveled at the size, puzzled over the purpose, and sometimes imagined the pyramids as granaries or fortresses. In their words, we see both awe and misunderstanding, a reminder that the past is often shaped as much by the storyteller as by the truth itself. These early accounts, even with their errors, helped keep Egypt's monuments alive in the minds of distant lands. And though the desert was silent, the pyramids continued to speak through those who carried their legend far beyond the Nile. As centuries passed and Egypt's ancient knowledge faded, the pyramids became blank pages upon which new stories were written. In medieval Arab chronicles, the Great Pyramid was said to be a storehouse built by a wise king before the flood, filled with books, treasures, and talismans to preserve the world's knowledge. Other tales imagined the pyramids as the tombs of mythical giants, or as prisons for restless spirits. Some storytellers claimed the stones were held together not by mortar, but by magical spells. Travelers from far-off lands returned home with accounts that grew stranger with each retelling, of secret chambers that led to the ends of the earth, of curses that struck down those who disturbed the dead. These myths were not born from ignorance alone. They were the mind's way of filling the silence, of explaining the inexplicable when the true purpose had been lost. And in their own way, they kept the pyramids alive, not as relics of the past, but as living presences in the imagination. Even today, when we know more than ever about their construction, the pyramids still invite mystery. Facts stand side by side with legend, and the line between them is often blurred by the desert haze. In 1798, the quiet of the Giza Plateau was broken by the tramp of boots and the clatter of French artillery. Napoleon Bonaparte had come to Egypt not only with soldiers, but with an army of minds. Mathematicians, artists, architects, and naturalists marched alongside the troops, their mission not to conquer the pyramids, but to study them. The scholars measured every angle, sketched every block, recorded every inscription they could find. They noted the faint graffiti left by ancient workers, the precise alignment of the stones with the cardinal points, the way the light shifted across the massive faces as the day passed. In their wake, they produced the monumental description, De L'Egypte, a work so vast it captured not only the pyramids, but temples, tombs, flora, fauna, and fragments of a civilization long silent. It was during this campaign that a soldier stumbled upon a dark, heavy slab in the Nile Delta, the Rosetta Stone, the key that would one day unlock the language of the pharaohs. Napoleon's expedition marked the birth of Egyptology as a discipline. The pyramids were no longer just wonders to be marveled at or myths to be told. They became puzzles to be solved, their stones read like a text, their builders seen not as legends, but as people. From this point forward, the sands would never again be quite so quiet. The 19th century brought a new kind of explorer to Egypt's sands. Steamships now churned the Mediterranean, railways crept along the Nile, and the pyramids were no longer weeks away by caravan. They were a destination for the curious, the wealthy, and the ambitious. Some came as scholars, armed with notebooks and measuring rods. Others came as treasure hunters, eager for gold and relics. Early excavations often meant tunneling through the heart of the monuments, breaking through walls and chambers in search of whatever lay within. In their eagerness, some left the scars we still see today. By the early 20th century, methods began to change. Systematic digs replaced hasty digging. Photography and detailed mapping preserved what hands could not. The pyramids stood witness to an era of remarkable finds, from the recovery of ancient papyri to the unsealing of long-lost mastabas. The desert became a stage where explorers like Flinders, Petrie, and George Reisner meticulously documented every shard, every skeleton, every tool. Each season added a new thread to Egypt's story, weaving together the lives of kings and commoners alike. The wind still blew across the plateau, but now it carried the sound of picks, the click of shutters, and the murmur of foreign voices, all drawn here by the same pull that had haunted travelers for centuries. Even after more than 4,000 years, the pyramids are not finished giving up their secrets. In recent years, scientists have turned to tools far beyond chisels and lanterns, instruments that can see through stone without breaking a single block. Using cosmic Riemann imaging, researchers have scanned the Great Pyramid as if it were an enormous, ancient puzzle box. In the patterns of particle traces, they have found something unexpected, a vast, hidden void high above the grand gallery, untouched since the day the last stone was set in place. Thermal cameras reveal patches of heat that hint at unseen chambers or structural mysteries. Drones and 3D modeling create precise maps, capturing every contour of the pyramid's weathered faces in digital form. This marriage of ancient monument and modern technology has changed how we see the pyramids. They are no longer silent relics. They are dynamic archives, holding stories still sealed in the heart of the stone. And though we may soon know more about their internal structure than ever before, the true human drama of how and why they were built remains a whisper, one we can only follow deeper into the past. The pyramids have endured for millennia, but the passing centuries are not their greatest threat. We are. Each year, millions of visitors stand at the base of these giants, their footsteps wearing the pathways smooth, their breath adding unseen moisture to ancient chambers. The very act of reaching out to touch the stone, though filled with awe, leaves behind oils and dust that the desert wind cannot sweep away. Beyond the plateau, Cairo's skyline creeps ever closer. Air pollution darkens the limestone, traffic, vibrations ripple through the ground, and the modern city hums at the very edge of antiquity. Even the sand itself is shifting, burying or revealing at its own whim. Egyptian authorities and international teams work together to slow the damage, restoring crumbling blocks, stabilizing walls, limiting entry to certain passages. Tourism funds these efforts, but also fuels the very pressure they seek to control. Preserving the pyramids is a delicate negotiation between past and present, reverence and curiosity. They are not only monuments of stone, but living symbols, and to keep them standing is to decide, every day, how much of them the world may touch, and how much must remain untouchable. From the moment they were first described in distant lands, the pyramids have stirred the human imagination. In the 19th century, engravings of the Giza Plateau adorned bookshelves across Europe and America, fueling a romantic fascination with the Orient and its ancient wonders. Writers placed their heroes beneath the shadow of the pyramids, weaving tales of lost treasures, forgotten curses, and eternal love. Painters captured the monuments beneath vast golden skies, or in moonlight so pale the stones seemed to glow. Their canvases were not just landscapes, they were invitations to dream of another time. In the 20th century, film brought the pyramids to life in new ways: adventure, epics, documentaries, and even science fiction. Imagining them as alien beacons or cosmic machines. In literature, they appear in everything from historical novels to modern thrillers, each author reshaping them to fit the story they wish to tell. Even in architecture, their influence endures, from pyramid-shaped memorials in far-off cemeteries to glass and steel echoes in the hearts of modern cities. The pyramids are more than Egypt's. They belong to the shared imagination of the world, carrying the weight not only of stone, but of centuries of dreams. The centuries have brought change to everything around the pyramids: cities rising, empires falling, rivers shifting, but the sky above them has barely altered. On a clear desert night, the constellations still hang where ancient eyes once found them, Orion's belt still pointing toward the same horizon. Long before telescopes or satellites, the builders aligned their monuments with the heavens, trusting in the eternal rhythm of the stars. That same rhythm still beats above the plateau, silent and sure. Stand there now, and the wind carries little sound but its own sigh. The moon traces its silver path across the stone as it has for 4,000 years, shadows sliding slowly down the weathered faces. Somewhere in the darkness, a night bird calls, as it might have in the days of Khufu. It is a reminder that though our tools and languages have changed, the sky, the great witness to human striving, has remained the same. The pyramids are monuments to the earth, but they are also markers beneath a shared, unchanging dome of light. The desert air cools after the long heat of the day, carrying the faint scent of sand and stone. Your footsteps sink into the powdery earth, muffled, as if the ground itself wishes for silence. Ahead, the pyramids rise, not golden in the sun now, but deep, shadowed silhouettes against a sky scattered with stars. The wind stirs, whispering along the weathered edges of the blocks. Every surface seems to breathe, holding the warmth of the vanished sun, releasing it in slow, invisible waves. Somewhere in the distance, the city murmurs faintly, but here it feels impossibly far away. You walk closer, until the stone fills your view, the edges of each block sharp in the moonlight. Run your fingers along it, and you touch time itself, the faint chiseling of ancient hands, the quiet endurance of millennia. Above, Orion's belt tilts toward the horizon, as if marking the way for a traveler. You stand still, listening, and in the stillness you almost think you can hear it, the heartbeat of the desert, the patient, eternal watch of the pyramids. Close your eyes, and the desert fades. The plateau stirs with life, thousands of voices, layered across the centuries. You hear the deep call of overseers, urging the workers onward as sledges groan under the weight of stone. The laughter of children drifts from the workers' village, mingling with the sharp ring of copper tools striking limestone. Priests chant hymns to Ra as the sun rises, their words carrying over the sand like a tide of sound. On in the quiet moments between, there is the low, deliberate voice of a pharaoh, not speaking to the crowd, but to eternity, dedicating the monument to the gods, to the stars, to his own journey beyond this life. Then the voices begin to fade, one by one, until only the wind remains, moving softly through the ancient passageways. Yet, somehow, their echoes linger in the stone, waiting for anyone who will stop and listen. The pyramids keep their secrets well, but if you stand in their shadow long enough, you may hear them, the murmur of a civilization that built for forever. Time is not a straight road in Egypt. It loops, it folds, it circles back. There were centuries when the pyramids stood alone in silence, their builders' names fading from memory, their purpose guessed at but not truly known. Sand buried, the smaller tombs, inscriptions crumbled, entire stories dissolved into dust. Then, in other centuries, curiosity returned like a tide. Travelers arrived, sketching their shapes, chipping away souvenirs. Archaeologists followed, brushing away the centuries grain by grain, piecing together fragments of a vanished world. Each wave of discovery seemed final, yet always there was more hidden beneath the sand, more locked behind unbroken stones. In losing, we learned to seek. In seeking, we found, and in finding, we remembered that much can still be lost again. The pyramids endure, but the stories around them are fragile things, forever caught between forgetting and remembering. The desert night has grown still. The stars drift slowly west, and the moon hangs low over the dark horizon. The pyramids stand as they have for millennia, their sharp edges softened by the quiet glow of starlight. There is nothing left to do now but breathe. Let the warm wind brush against your face, carrying the scent of sand and ancient stone. The voices of workers, priests, and kings have faded into silence, yet the presence of their world lingers here, steady, patient, eternal. Close your eyes. Somewhere beyond the night, the Nile still flows, the constellations still shine, and the pyramids keep their endless vigil. Rest now beneath their watch. They will be here in the morning.